Thank you very much. We have a full-packed hall here. And first and foremost, let me thank Tun for agreeing to be dialoguing with us today. This is going to be a special occasion, and I think the audience would enjoy very much on the views that you have about the current situation in the world, current situation in ASEAN, and the issues that perhaps we can all ask and can all help to solve. Let me just start with the first one. I think everybody knows that we're right in the midst of the fourth industrial revolution. And this is changing the way we do business, the way we conduct our daily lives, and so many things that's happening in the social scene because of the fourth industrial revolution. I would like to ask Tun about your views on whether or not we're ready for the fourth industrial revolution, and how should we assist some of these MSMEs, I include micro in there, assist them in coming into up to speed with a 4.0, particularly SMEs who are not in the value chain of the bigger companies. Please, Tun, this is something that we'd like to find out from you on the fourth industrial revolution.
Firstly, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to meet the people of ASEAN. We are here at an ASEAN meeting, and I suppose I should speak more about ASEAN. But before I talk about Industry 4.0, I would like to talk about the base where Industry 4.0 is going to happen. And the base is the ASEAN population. We have 650 million people in the ASEAN region, but we are not making full use of our population. On the other hand, we see China with a population double that of ASEAN, 1.4 billion people. China decided to modernize. Within 40 years, China has outstripped every other economy and has become a world economic power, to the extent that there are a lot of people who are quite jealous of China. How is it that China can speed up and achieve such great economic growth? The fact is that they make use of their population. They have a huge domestic market, 1.4 million people, 1.4 billion people. True, the people were very poor then when they started. China was a third world country. But even poor people would need something. They would need a lot of things for their food supply, for their transportation, etc. And because of this demand by a domestic market, the market can grow. If you know what the people want and you are prepared to produce what the people need, eventually, of course, this will develop into a big industry, and a big industry contributes much towards the economic growth of the country. Now, ASEAN has 650 million people, but we have not done we have not performed the way we should. We are not making our 650 million domestic market. It's regional, but it is still domestic. If we take ASEAN altogether, it is still domestic, but we are not making full use of our population. And we can do this. And now, of course, we are going to enter into the new industrial age, the fourth revolution, the fourth industrial revolution. And this will help us grow much faster than before, because communication is such that we are very near to each other. We can know exactly what each one of us wants and make use of our needs in order to invest to provide for these needs. We can do this if we work together and determine who should do what. If we do this, then none of the ASEAN members will be left behind. We talk so much about the new digitalization and the new ways of doing business. Obviously, this will grow the economy is much faster than before, but we are not attending to these new methods of doing business. The first thing we need to do, of course, is to educate our people. They must understand what is meant by digitalized economy, what is meant by doing things by digitalizing. All these things can be taught so that our people will know how to respond to the new technologies. We see in China, for example, very quickly, they did away with cash. They now buy and sell everything through the new means of communication. And they are selling much more because they have a good domestic market. We too have a good domestic market, but our people are still not upgraded to the new technologies. So the first thing we need to do is to have a kind of education campaign to make people know how they can make use of this new technology so as to improve the quality of their life. The people who are in business, they too must understand how to make use of digitalization and this equipment such as the mobile phone, the computers and everything else in order to communicate very quickly and so to even do bigger business. I know of a case in Malaysia where a lady makes cakes and tries to sell the cake through the shops. She was okay, but she didn't do very well. She decided to go online, and now she has more than 90,000 customers spread from Malaysia to the Far East, to the Middle East. So her business has become very big, and many of them can really become even millionaires selling very simple products. So the market has grown even for the village people, from weaving baskets and selling in the village to weaving basket and selling to the whole world. The whole world has become the market for everyone. And because the demand is so big, it cannot be done manually, it cannot be done in the usual way. You need to understand the uses of online marketing, online selling, online delivery, etc. So a whole new set of ideas of doing business, new ways of doing business has become fairly common. And we believe that China is well ahead of us because they are much better integrated than we are. We are 10 countries, each with different ideas, different needs. So we don't work well as we should. But I think we need to overcome this separation of the members of the ASEAN countries. If we do that, I'm quite sure that we will be able to benefit from the new technologies, from the way we market things, from the way we advertise, the way we deliver, the way we sell, the way we buy. All these things can be done differently and at a faster pace. And with that, our economies will also grow much faster. And maybe we can catch up with some of the other developed countries. Because now developed countries are also faced with new problems of making use of new technologies in order to build their economy. So I hope, I cannot speak in detail about the mechanics of all these things that people should know, but I think if we understand the new technologies and we make use of them, our economies will grow much faster. And of course, if we make full use of a population of 650 million in our region, I'm quite sure we have the domestic market. The domestic market is always the testing ground for products. Once it sells at home, then we can begin to export to other countries. That way, we will be able to eliminate the early mistakes, the early faults, and become producers of quality goods acceptable to the whole world. So I'll stop there in case you want to ask questions.
Thank you, Tun. I think that's very clear, and I think that covers a lot of aspects in terms of what we want to be talking about. This one particular phrase that people in ASEAN, every country wants to be a hub. And this is something that I think it's not possible that everyone will be a hub. How do you look at this concept of individual hub, or should we have a combined ASEAN hub so that the world would look at ASEAN as only one hub? Would that make sense? Or perhaps you may have a view on this.
When ASEAN was formed, there were only 5 members. At that time, the idea came that with that 5 countries, we should industrialize. But of course, at that time, our population was quite small, and at the same time, the population was quite poor. So we wanted to go into the heavy industries. But everybody wants to do the same thing. They want to be steel makers, they want to be producers of certain goods which are in demand all over the country, all over the region. So it was decided that the 5 countries should identify their assets and what the assets can be used for. And so we decided on each country being host to a certain business. Malaysia was asked to do fertilizers, which is good for us because we had gas. So was Indonesia. But the other countries, they were allocated steel making, but it didn't take off because we are reluctant to work together. The idea is that each country will hold 60% of the share and 10% each for the other countries, for each industry in each country. So it is a very good distribution. It will enable us to make full use of our market. But somehow or other than the fertilizer industry in Malaysia and in Indonesia, the others did not take off. There was unwillingness even to subscribe to the shares. Needed 10% from each country, 60% for the host country. This is the way to overcome this demand to be the hub. You will be the hub of this industry, the other country will be a hub for another industry, but we will work together.
Thank you very much. Now, moving into the digital concept, the government, I'm sure that the government, of ASEAN, all the governments have rolled out plans to strengthen digital infrastructure. As I indicated early in the morning, if you have inefficient digital infrastructure, there is no 4.0. So what we're looking at here is that, what are the plans, or how should ASEAN countries adopt digital technology to enhance the social and business environment? And how can the governments help? I think first we have to start with the government to build strong, effective digital infrastructure to get this thing rolling. So perhaps you can give us some, views on this particular area. This would also, I would like also to cover the logistics part of the thing, because they're all interrelated.
Well, digital economy is based on speed of communication. Our speed of communication today is very, very fast, and we are connected to the whole world now. So, by using digitalization, you don't have to do everything manually, spelling out things, etc. You can communicate very, very quickly through these 2 digits that you use, 0 and 1. It is strange that when you have an alphabet that numbers in the thousands, communication and description becomes more difficult. You reduce it to 36. It's much better, but not as good as we want it to be. But with these 2 digits, we can describe everything by assigning numbers to whatever it is that we want to say or do or describe. So that speeds up the communication, and because of that, we can reach out to everyone in a very quick response to whatever it is that we want. But government themselves must understand the use of this digitalization economy. Not every government knows. I know we are in Malaysia also sometimes quite far behind others, but we need to understand the use of this digitalization in communication, and for that to communicate and tell the whole world what we want to do or what we have produced or what we want to sell. This is very important. First, the government. Then the government must tell the consumers, the industries, and the consumers that this is the way to do things now. You don't have to go to the banks to get your cash and all that. All can be done wherever you are. You don't have to go to the bank. In fact, banks are closing some of their branches already. Of course, bookstores are also suffering from this. But in place of this, the elimination of some of the old facilities, now we can do everything from wherever we are. We may be at home, we may be in the shop, we may be in the office, but we can do business with the whole world. That is the benefit of digitalization. And if the government promotes this, then the economy will take off much faster. And if the government gives direction, determine what is the priority for the country, I think that we will all benefit from digitalization because it speeds up everything that we do. And I believe that many of the ASEAN countries are already well up in terms of their knowledge of the digitalization, but there are many, many new areas because it gives you power. What has happened is that new power is given to everybody, and the men with the ideas will make use of the power and benefit from it. That is why we have billionaires and all that. They know the power of the new means of communication, digitalization, and they have introduced systems which enable things to be done much faster and easier. Thank you.
Thank you, Tun. Let me go into a little bit more difficult question. In fact, it's not difficult. It's been lingering in the system for some time. And when we talk about free trade, zero duty doesn't mean anything anymore. When you have NTBs, NTMs, that are popping up maybe every other week, this is, something that I think the ASEAN Business Advisory Council members are very worried about. We have presented to SIOM, to economic ministers, and of course to the leaders, that we're very worried that we are not getting any reduction, any NTBs or NTMs. And this is a difficult task, we understand, but the objective is to try to reduce, because we have two targets. One is to reduce the intra-ASEAN trade cost by 10% by 2020. We also want to increase the intra-ASEAN trade transaction, the total trade, to double from the level of the 2014 within 2025. These two targets, I have a feeling that we won't be able to reach if we continue to come up with more NTBs and NTMs. You can help us move things a little bit faster, but if you think that I really don't know what to do now. We have been asking the leaders to help on this particular one, and we will keep doing it until we get some concrete results. We need some daring, maybe daring, forceful decisions to make sure that this thing will happen.
Well, this all began when the developed countries introduced globalization, a borderless world. At that time, they had all the products, and we are going to be their market. And they were very happy about it, because they can sell to us, but we can only sell to them some raw materials. So it wasn't really very good for us. But now, everything can be done everywhere easily. The new technologies enable the products to be produced almost anywhere without too much hassle about technologies, etc. So now we can produce and we can market our products. The good example is Japan, Korea, and China. They have mastered the technology of manufacturing, and they have made use of new manufacturing methods, and they can compete with any country in the world. And when they produce cheaper products of high quality, it worries the previous big powers or big economies. So there is a tendency now, despite before preaching to the world free market, multilateralism, now they want to close down their borders to a certain extent. In fact, some are already building walls to prevent people from moving and goods from moving. So there is a fear now that competition this time would benefit the countries in the East rather than the developed countries of the West. That is why now there is a lot of resistance expressed popularly by the people. And politicians have responded to that by listening to the people and their worries about their jobs, about their growth, etc. And they like to now restrict trade rather than have free trade, restrict trade, because now they understand that they are at the wrong end. Before we were at the wrong end. Before we were the consumers, they were the producers. Now we are going to be the producers and they have to be the consumers, consuming good, high-quality products which are cheaper than what they can produce even in their own country. So the mindset has changed now. It's a very negative change, in fact, with all this new capacity where free trade would enrich all the countries of the world. Some of the old developed countries are not too happy that they cannot compete like before where they hold the advantage, but now the competition in terms of product, in terms of access to market has been leveled out. That even other countries, smaller countries, can make use of new technology to compete with the developed countries. So that is where now we see popularism is mounting in Europe and in America, where there are talks about limiting trade, about trade wars and applying higher taxes for imports and all that. But I think this will not last very long, because they will understand that if they cut themselves off from the new producers, they stand to lose a lot. They cannot really stop trade from expanding and becoming multilateral than with the new technologies in place. Thank you.
Thank you. So I take it that these two targets will not be achieved, but we will continue to work these particular two targets. Now we want to talk about something in trend. If we don't talk about this particular issue, we're not in trend. So we want to talk about the trade war a little bit, or maybe a little bit more. The trade war, as Tun, you understand that currently the trade war, I'd say, personally, I think it is creating a tempestuous period. Confusion, slower growth. This is not easy for the world economy. Yeah. And I'm sure everybody knows what I'm talking about. The two superpowers. Now, what's happening today is that people say, if the elephants fight up there, the grasses will die. And this is exactly what's happening today. Slower growth, you can see, and things are not moving in the right direction. What we want to do is for growth of the world economy, but this is not happening. So, how can we tackle this particular problem? Let me just hone in on ASEAN. ASEAN leaders, we have 10 leaders with a section. ASEAN, we've been working for 52 years for a purpose, common goal in the ASEAN Economic Community pillar, and that is free trade. Today, protectionistic sentiment is creating some havoc in the whole system. It is disheartening for us to sit here and say, we've been working for 52 years and we're not really going anywhere, and this is going to be dragging us a little bit slower. What we would like to see is for ASEAN, collectively the leaders, to have a collective statement or something to declare to the world that we are concerned. In fact, if specifically what you would like me to say, I would say we should be calling for world economic peace. This is something that the ASEAN Business Advisory Council members have been discussing in many fora. So, with you here with us, you've heard me say this before. We'd like to hear your views on how we should try and see if we can calm down the superpowers. And we should develop some common ground for ASEAN. We have a voice. We have a voice in G20. We've been invited to G20 summit, Singapore, this year Thailand because of the chair, ASEAN chair, and of course Vietnam next year's chairs. We should do something. This is very simple. To me, it's very simple. It's like when I talk to the leaders. You can listen to us, you hear us, you don't want to do anything, that's up to you. When you go to a bigger fora, you're talking about G20 and the big ones. If we say something, they want to listen, it's fine. Don't want to do something, fine. But if we gather enough voices, when we gather enough voices, they think that, hey, we're saying the right thing. This is the highest growth region in the world, ASEAN. 650 million people. If they think that we are saying the right thing, a lot of countries will follow suit, and I think the superpowers will kind of calm down a little bit. We can't dictate what they do. But we can kind of ask them to please, calm down a little bit and let the world have a world economic peace. Your view, please, Tun. We'd like to hear from you on this particular subject.
Well, if you want to be listened to, you must be powerful. You must be strong, or you must be very rich. Otherwise, nobody listens to you. We are all members of the World Trade Organization. We attend their meetings. Malaysia attends as Malaysia. And we have to contend with America, which sends 200 well-trained lawyers to argue against us. And they figured out some ways where they can get their way. We cannot be present in all the subcommittees they form, so they had a field day. Because they were there, we were not there. But if we function as a region, as a regional organization, as ASEAN, then we will have more people to argue in our favor at this forum. And when you have more people, you can attend all the meetings and express your views. But if you go alone, or even Thailand goes alone, it will not be as strong as 10 ASEAN countries. So we need to be together. We need to speak with one language. And that means that before any international gathering of countries, we have to decide what would be our stand. And we should keep to that stand alone. If we ourselves are made use of, sometimes practically bribed into supporting their ideas, then of course we will lose out. But ASEAN must have a single stand at all international meetings. Then they will listen to us. ASEAN is quite a big market for the whole world. We don't want to go into a trade war, but sometimes when they do things that are not nice to us, we have to be unnice to them. For example, they claim that palm oil from Malaysia is is produced through cutting down all our forests, and therefore they shouldn't buy palm oil. They label all their product without Malaysian palm oil to sabotage us, because palm oil can compete anytime with olive oil or rapeseed or whatever. So to go against Malaysia, they decided that we are not kind to the tribes living in the jungle. We are killing the habitats of animals and flowers, etc. That is their excuse. So what do we do? Well, if you cut down on imports of palm oil from Malaysia, we will cut down on some of our imports from you. Equal amount. You do exactly what Mr. Trump does. Not a very nice man, but he does those things. And we can learn even from people who are not so nice. So if we do these things together, believe me, they will listen. Supposing if they don't take Malaysian palm oil and Indonesian palm oil, we can, stop buying aeroplanes and all that. We'll buy some Russian planes or something like that. Immediately the response is, no, not this country, that country, that country. Well, now all the countries are saying, no, we are not involved with this. This is a European Union decision, but we as a country don't subscribe to that. So you see the response, because we speak with a louder voice. So we have to make full use of our strength. And our strength lies in our market. We have a market of 650 million people. Poor people, yes, but still a good market. And we can identify what would hurt them if they hurt us. So that's the way to go. And in the meantime, our economy grows. And when our economy grows, we have a stronger voice. But always try to speak with one voice. You go alone, you will be bullied. That's the way out, I think.
Thank you very much, Tun. I take it this way, that let's start now. Let's start now, meaning that this particular summit, perhaps I'm still hopeful that the leaders of ASEAN will get together and come up with something, some common ground for the world on this particular subject. And it's very, very encouraging with your message over there. I think we're on the same wavelength. Now, I think when we talk about this particular subject, some people in the audience would also like to know, how long is this going to go on? Is this going to be another year, another 5 years? And what are we going to do about it? Well, no, what's going to happen to all of us here? This is something that I think is probably in everybody's mind. Hey, is this going to go on for another 10 years? This is unacceptable to the 650 million people that are crying out to say, hey, what are the leaders going to do to help us? Perhaps you can do some guess on what's going to happen.
Well, I think people will come to their senses one day. Perhaps one particular person. We now have a system of limiting the terms of our leaders. Before, Mr. Roosevelt was there for about 5 terms. That's a long time. I was in Malaysia also for 5 terms. But that's a good thing for me, if not for Malaysia. But anyway, America allows only 2 terms for each president. So at the very worst, this is going to go on for another 5 years, if he wins. But if he loses, we see the effect of leaders. Leaders make decisions that affect their country either well or badly. We see countries becoming poor because of leaders making the wrong decision. Change the leaders, immediately the country goes in a different direction, perhaps a better direction. So when you limit the terms to 2 terms, then the damage done would be much less. Otherwise, the people should turn against leaders who are doing bad things for their country. In Malaysia, of course, we have this party which won independence for Malaysia 60 years ago. And they have been supported all the way for 60 years. But when they went wrong, the people turned against them and defeated them in the last election. So the people can play a role in ensuring that their governments do the right things. I believe that the American people are not very happy some are very happy perhaps, but many people are not very happy with the present policies of their government. Many are against this trade war. And I believe that the next 5 years will see results. But it may even be sooner if leadership is changed. Because this is actually the decision of one person. His decision, not the decision of the country as a whole. No plebiscite, no referendum. Suddenly a trade war was declared. So if the person is not there, then maybe there will be a change.
Thank you very much. Let me just mention the last phrase that I'd like to say to everybody. I think everybody knows that the result of wars, the result of a war is only one thing, and that is destruction. And that's really bad. So I just want to leave that with you. Now we come to the end of our session. I take the prerogative of extending maybe 1 or 2 minutes to ask this last question to Tun. I think everybody wants to know. I want to ask you how you keep so fit. You are 94 years old. You walk like a, let me say, 50-year-old person. You can do a lot of things and your mind is very sharp. And I hope that I can live up to at least your age. How do you do it? What do you do? What do you eat? Yeah, I think all of us would like to know, what do you eat to make you live so long? And still your brains are so, still working. Where do you find a person at 94 years old to understand all this 0 and 1, the digital type, digital system? So, please, Tun.
I thought you were going to ask me about war. I'm against war. War does not result in anything except, as you say, destruction. And very frequently, the losers gain more than the winners.
Right.
As you see how Japan has recovered, how Germany has recovered, and poor Britain, the winners, not doing so well. So war is a crime and it should be treated as a crime. But to answer your question is very difficult. Practically, I do not know how I survive. It is, if you don't suffer from some debilitating disease or fatal diseases, then you can live for quite a long time. But if you do not exercise some discipline in your life, I think you will not be able to survive for long. One of the things about food nowadays is that it tastes so nice. And as you grow older, the food tastes nicer. And when the food tastes nicer, you eat a lot. You eat more than you should. It's not a question of, you live to eat, but it's about you should eat to live, but not live to eat. But when the food is so nice, you take more. What happens? Your stomach gets bigger. When the stomach gets bigger, you have to take more food in order to assuage your hunger. And then one day, another very good tasty food, and you take more than you should. Again, the stomach gets bigger. And as a result, many people get obese in this world today because of food being available so easily. When you get obese, you get fat. The heart has a hard time trying to pump all that blood all over your body. And naturally, you are making the heart, which is made to last 100 years, but because it had to work harder, twice as hard, then you reduce the length of time you live. So first thing is, don't overeat. Eat to live and don't live to eat. That's very simple. And when the food is nice, stop eating. That is my mother's advice to me. When the food is tasty, stop eating. Very difficult. But you have to develop the discipline of stopping from eating when the food is nice to prevent your stomach from becoming bigger and demanding more food to assuage your hunger. That is the first thing. I think if you don't eat fatty food, too much carbohydrates and all that, and sugar, I think you will be much more healthy. And then the next thing is, if you are healthy, what do? You have to be active. You have to exercise your body. The muscles must be used. We know that if muscles are not used, they decrease. In size, they will become weaker. If you sleep too much, as you often do when you are old or when you are sick, when you get up, you feel giddy because you find that the muscles cannot sustain you standing up or even running. So you have to be active and not sleep too much. And active means the whole system, not just the muscles, but also the brain. The brain begins to recede in power as you grow old because you don't use your brain. But if you use your brain all the time, you talk, you sing, you argue, you debate, you quarrel, all these things activate the brain, and the brain will be still functioning well. And if it's not functioning well over certain things, do it over and over again. Whatever we do repeatedly, we will remember, and the brain will remember. But if you tend to, after retirement, you tend to rest and go to sleep, the brain as well as the body will lose the capacity, their capacities. And it's not only the body, the muscles and the brain, but all the other organs of the body, the liver, the pancreas, everything will deteriorate if you don't use. So the best thing to do is to be active and to use your brain all the time. If you make use of your brain, then I think you will be still able to answer questions like yours. So there are these many things. So many people have asked me this question that I feel obliged to write it down. I will write it down one day and to explain to people. Not scientifically. I didn't do any scientific examination. What I did was I observed what happens to me and what happens to other people, and I make my own conclusions. Not very scientific, not proven, no tests, but this is what I observe in the life that I have had. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Finally, Tun, we would like to thank you very kindly for spending time with us. This is something that is unprecedented in the ABIS. And I think this is more fun than trying for you to just speak alone. So, again, thank you very much for coming, and I hope that we can invite you to come and speak to our forum every year. Thank you very much. A big round of applause for the Tun. Thank you.
Thank you, His Excellency Tun Dr Mahathir Mohamad, Prime Minister of Malaysia, and Mr. Arinjit Ra, Chairman of ASEAN Back 2019.